Have you noticed that sometimes the more you open up to family, the more complicated things get? You start with good intentions, wanting to be close, honest, and connected. But somehow, the more you share, the less peace you feel inside. Many of us only realize this after 65. It's not because our families don't love us. They do. It's because love is messy. It comes with expectations, opinions, and strong emotions. And when you put everything out there, you often get reactions you didn't see coming. For years, I thought complete honesty was the best way to stay close. I really believed that if I told my family everything, they'd see it as a sign of trust. But over time, I discovered something quietly powerful. Not every detail needs to be spoken. Not because it's bad or shameful, but because at this stage of life, peace is worth more than anything. After all we've lived through, we've earned that right. So in this video, I don't want to lecture you. I just want to share 5 lessons I've learned, things that are often better kept to yourself after 65. It's not about hiding, it's about wisdom. If you've ever left a conversation feeling drained because you overshared, this message is for you. And if you're new here, welcome. This is a space for seniors who want to live the next chapter with dignity, calm, and confidence. Let's jump in. The first thing is a big one, your exact finances. Now, I know what you might be thinking. We're told to be transparent with our families. We think if we show them our savings, retirement plans, and future arrangements, we'll avoid surprises down the road. That's what I used to think, too. But here's what nobody tells you. Once you share every detail, the family dynamic shifts, sometimes slowly, sometimes overnight. Take Robert, for example. He's 82, a retired accountant who always lived carefully within his means. A few years ago, he decided to sit down with his 2 daughters and share everything: bank accounts, investments, the house deed, even his estate plan. He thought it would bring relief and gratitude. Instead, it opened the door to endless questions. "Dad, why stay in such a large house? Shouldn't you sell before something happens? What's your plan if you need long-term care?" One daughter even offered to move in to help manage his money. It was all said with love. But over time, Robert started to feel boxed in. Every purchase became a conversation. A new recliner? Do you really need that? A vacation? Is it safe at your age? Even small things, like buying new shoes, drew comments. The hardest part for him wasn't the questions. It was the feeling that he'd lost the freedom to make decisions without someone weighing in. That's the danger. Once you fully open that door, it's hard to close it again. Even the kindest family members can unintentionally overstep. And in less fortunate cases, distant relatives suddenly take an interest, not in you, but in your money. Now, don't get me wrong. You should absolutely plan ahead. Have a will, a power of attorney, and a trusted person lined up if you can't manage things yourself. But sharing every detail too early can bring pressure you never asked for. Privacy isn't secrecy, it's protection. You don't owe anyone a breakdown of your accounts. Your savings are the result of years of work and sacrifice that only you fully understand. And the best person to decide how they're used is you. Protect your peace. Share only when the time is right, and only with people who truly respect your boundaries. Now, let's talk about something that feels so natural to share: your health. As we age, our bodies naturally change. Aches, stiffness, and sleepless nights come with the territory. And because we love our families, we want to talk about it. But here's the thing: our small comments can carry more weight than we realize. Meet Linda, age 77. She's a widow who loves gardening, volunteers at her church, and still walks her dog every morning. One day, after doing yard work, she casually told her son her shoulders were sore. Just a passing remark. Her son panicked. He booked her a physical therapy appointment, started calling twice a day, and even suggested hiring help around the house. Before long, he was making comments like, "Are you sure you should be driving?" Or, "Maybe you shouldn't carry heavy bags anymore." Linda felt smothered. She appreciated the concern, but she hated being treated like she was fragile. All because of one casual comment. That's the subtle danger. By sharing every ache and pain, you risk changing how your family sees you. They start worrying constantly, and before you know it, you're being treated like a patient instead of the capable person you are. Now, if something serious is going on, of course your family should know. They deserve to be part of the conversation. But small, everyday discomforts? You don't need to broadcast those. Because the truth is, you've lived in your body long enough to know what's serious and what's not. And you are more than your health issues. You are wisdom, humor, hobbies, and memories, not just your aches and pains. Let's move to another lesson. Family conflicts. We've all seen them. Siblings arguing, in-laws clashing, old grudges popping back up. And as the elder, it feels natural to step in, to smooth things over. But here's the hard truth. The more you say, the greater the risk. Let me tell you about Eleanor, an 81-year-old friend of mine. One afternoon, while visiting her daughter, she gently suggested that her grandson, age 6, could start putting away his own toys. That's all she said. Her daughter went cold. The calls slowed down. Visits became rare. Eleanor, who had only meant to help, ended up feeling distant from her family over a single sentence. That's what can happen when we share opinions in sensitive situations. Even the most gentle advice can be heard as criticism. And once it's said, it's remembered. That's why sometimes silence is the wisest choice. You don't have to join every argument. You don't have to pick a side. You can love deeply without inserting yourself into every problem. The most powerful words can be, "I trust you to work it out," or simply, "I don't want to take sides, but I'm here if you need me." That way, you stay the calm, steady presence instead of being pulled into the storm. And that's what real peace looks like. Because in the end, protecting your emotional well-being is just as important as protecting your health or your money. And after all these years, you've more than earned that peace. Your role now, more than ever, is to keep your heart steady, not just for them, but for yourself. You've seen how quickly words can leave marks, how well-intentioned advice can turn into hurt that lingers for years. And at this stage of life, you've earned the right to step back, to watch, to hope, to pray if you want, but not to let yourself be pulled into every fire. Because the truth is, peace is too valuable now. You've lived long enough to know that not every conversation needs your voice. You've witnessed enough family gatherings, tense debates, and mixed-up intentions to realize silence can be an act of kindness. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is hold back, let them figure it out, and keep your presence steady but gentle. Now, let's shift to something softer than conflict, but often heavier than it seems: our regrets. At this point in life, we all carry some. Even the happiest people hold a few what-ifs and I wish I hads. That's just being human. You think about the jobs you didn't take, the places you never traveled, the chances that passed you by. And sometimes, those thoughts slip out in conversations with your kids, grandkids, or even in casual moments over coffee. But here's a perspective I've grown to believe. Not every regret should be spoken out loud, especially not to the people closest to you. Take Lorraine, for example. She's 78, a retired librarian who balanced raising 3 kids with helping her husband through years of health struggles. One afternoon, during a quiet chat with her son, she admitted, "Sometimes I wish I'd followed my dream to live abroad when I was younger." She meant it as a simple reflection, not a complaint. But her son didn't hear it that way. He later confessed it made him feel like her sacrifices hadn't been worth it, that somehow he and his siblings had held her back, that maybe the family life they built together wasn't enough. That's the challenge with regrets. What feels like honesty to us can sound like rejection to them. We think we're sharing wisdom, but they may hear disappointment. When you say, "I wish I'd stayed at that job," They may hear, "You weren't worth it." When you say, "I should have lived somewhere else," they may feel like their home wasn't enough for you. Your truth becomes their wound, even though that was never your intent. There's another layer, too. The more we talk about regrets, the more people start to see us as stuck in yesterday instead of living in today. They may back away, thinking we're lost in the past. They may treat us like we're fragile, as if our best days are long gone, even when we know better. Now, don't misunderstand me. Your feelings matter. Your regrets are real. You've lived fully, and you have every right to reflect honestly. But some reflections are better kept close. Not because they're shameful, but because they're sacred. Because saying them out loud can unintentionally weigh down the very people you love most. So instead of saying, "I wish I had done more," try saying, "I've learned so much from my journey." That one shift tells your story with wisdom, not sorrow. It honors what you've lived without leaving someone else feeling like they weren't enough. This isn't about rewriting history. It's about framing your life in a way that brings peace to you and to those you love. You don't have to hide your truth. You don't have to pretend. But you do have the right to guard the emotional space between you and your family. And remember, peace in these years doesn't come from undoing the past. It comes from making peace with it, quietly, gracefully, on your own terms. Now, let's talk about the last secret. One people often feel pressured to share in the name of clarity: your inheritance plans. We've all heard the advice: don't leave your family guessing. Make sure everyone knows what to expect. And yes, planning ahead is smart. Having a clear will and someone you trust to handle things is important. But here's the truth that isn't said enough. The specifics of what you'll leave, who gets what, and how everything will be divided. Those details can do more harm than good when shared too soon. Take Helen, for instance. She's 84, a retired nurse who saved and budgeted carefully all her life. Wanting to be transparent, she sat down with her 3 children and told them her exact plans: how the house would be sold, how the accounts would be split, even which heirlooms would go to each. At first, it seemed like the right thing. But almost immediately, the dynamics shifted. Her oldest son started calling more, pressing her to sell the house sooner. Her daughter, who lived out of state, questioned why she wasn't receiving the same share as her brothers, citing her sacrifices. And her youngest grew distant, clearly uncomfortable with the whole conversation, but hurt nonetheless. What began as a thoughtful gesture turned into quiet tension and subtle competition. And here's what Helen confided to me. It felt like they started looking at the inheritance more than at me. That's the danger. When you reveal your plans in detail, even with the best of intentions, it can stir up expectations, jealousy, or entitlement. Instead of creating peace, it can create comparison and resentment. And once people know your plans, they may start judging your choices differently. Why buy a new car if the estate is going to be split? Why spend on travel when you could leave more for us? The unspoken pressure builds, and suddenly your freedom feels smaller. Now, let's be clear. You still need a will. You still need legal documents and a trusted decision-maker in place. But that doesn't mean you need to turn your later years into negotiations. You don't owe anyone a preview of your will. You don't need to justify your choices. What you decide to give or not give is yours to decide. Because your legacy is more than money. It's the life you've lived, the lessons you've passed on, the love you've given day after day. That's what lasts if you let it. And if someone only cares when the conversation turns to assets, then it's worth asking, do they truly value you or just what you have? Protecting your plans isn't selfish, it's wise, it's respectful of yourself, and it makes sure you can enjoy your golden years without carrying the weight of others' opinions. So let's close with this. You've spent a lifetime giving time, effort, advice, comfort. But now is your season to protect something just as valuable: your peace. Peace isn't a luxury at this stage of life. It's essential. A quiet space, a steady heart, the freedom to make choices without judgment. And often, the way to protect that peace isn't by hiding behind walls, but by choosing what not to say. Not out of fear, not out of distrust, but out of wisdom. So ask yourself, which truths are worth sharing, and which are better held close, not as secrets, but as treasures too delicate to hand over carelessly? If this message spoke to you, share your thoughts in the comments. What's one thing you've decided to keep private for yourself? Your insight might help someone else find peace too. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. Join our growing circle of wise, thoughtful seniors who know that peace isn't stumbled upon, it's protected, choice by choice. Thank you for spending this time with me. Until next time, guard your heart, guard your peace, and remember, you've earned it.